Welcome in. It's a brand new podcast, and I'm excited for this one. This, to me, is going to be awesome. One, because I love talking baseball. I love talking to our next guest about baseball. Well, we got a unique twist on it, though. This is called The Scout. It's the real scoop on baseball, on the Mariners, from an anonymous baseball scout who works for a Major League Baseball team right now, has been covering the sport for the past 30 years, been involved with the sport their entire life. So it's the real nitty-gritty stuff on the Mariners, right? No PC stuff like, how's this player? Well, the scout's going to tell us. And the biggest challenge for me for this podcast, The Scout, is to never reveal who you are. That's going to be my hardest thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's the debut episode of the Scout podcast. Scout, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to jump in. It's been a crazy offseason for the Mariners, a team obviously that you know a lot about. Because you have to know a lot about all these teams in Major League Baseball, being a scout for MLB. How let's do this. How would you sum up this offseason for this team?
I didn't hear you. Can you say it again, Puck?
How would you sum up this offseason for the team?
For the Mariners?
Yeah.
Well, I think from an outsider looking in, it's not part of that organization. I think, just listening to people talk, and you're totally passing judgment. But I kind of feel like the Mariners probably really like where they're at. They love their pitching, obviously, and I think they've offensively there's been some struggles offensively, and obviously it's not the easiest ballpark to play in. But how I'm reading between the lines, that it seems as if that organization says, you know what, we like where we're at, and we, some of our offensive players are going to have some bounce back years, and if they have bounce back years with the pitching staff that they have, I got to believe that organization feels like they got a chance to go to a World Series.
Do you you bring up the ballpark? How much is that a factor around baseball when you talk to people around the game? Just the issues that ballpark presents, specifically to offensive players.
Yeah, we got the Marine Air coming in, and you can't dictate when you want it open and when you want it closed. Major League Baseball does that, and obviously I was not in on the conversations, but even back when it was Safeco was built, even Griffey wasn't a big fan, because the ball didn't carry, right? So when guys try to whether you're a mid-market club and you're trying to sign free agents, guys want to go put up numbers. And if you look at, historically, that ballpark wasn't really conducive to giving up, to putting up big offensive numbers. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a factor. I mean, there's every stat known to man on certain ballparks, and, the type of numbers that happen in that ballpark. And it's not a hugely offensive park by any means.
When you look at how they're currently constructed, and I want to get into some of the players, and I want to first start with Jorge Polanco. They seem to get these players who have had success elsewhere, and then they come here, and then all of a sudden it just falls apart, and they just are not the same player anymore. And I know Jorge Polanco battled injuries, but what did you see from the scout perspective? What did you see with him last year and his struggles? And what are some things where it doesn't carry over this year, or is this what he did last year to you and to your eyes is just something it's going to come, and it's going to come again this year with him?
Yeah, from my perspective, Puck, I mean, you got to look at, for one, you have to look at the player's age. I mean, Polanco's 31 years old right now, and he's a 263 career hitter. Prior to last year, it was a little bit higher than that because he hit 213. But, his last 2 years in Minnesota was 255, and it was 235. He hadn't hit close to 300 since 2019. So you're talking 5 years ago. Players get older, right? And usually their prime is more, 27, 26 to 30 years old. That's kind of the prime of a player. So, you are probably, when you sign a player that's, 30 years old, you're getting them on the downside of their career. You're not getting them on the upside of their career. But, sometimes injuries, getting a little bit older, playing in a tough ballpark, playing with a new team, all those are factors. But I got to believe that they feel good about, him as a player. He's always been more of a contact that guy. But, last year he punched out 137 times, which is his career high. So, that shouldn't really, the ballpark shouldn't dictate your contact percentage. I got to believe the injuries and some of the other things played in that factor. But I think that Polanco is better than he showed last year, but you're probably going to see a guy that's more, if he's healthy, the guy that was more the 2022 or 23 Polanco when a guy that can hit about 215 instead of the 213 that he hit.
Tell me, I think you know more about it. You've been around the sport for 30 plus years, so you know way more than I do. To me, the transition, I saw a guy play second base last year who struggled to make throws from second to first, and now they're moving him to a different position, in a position he's not familiar with, has not played there a bunch. What the transition from playing second base to third base, how difficult is it, and what are the adjustments he'll have to make?
Yeah, the difference between second and third is just the reaction time. The ball's going to get hit at you quicker, right? And it's going to be on you quicker. So, you really got to have better hands necessarily at third base because you've got to react. Second base, when you're going from third to second, it's more about turning the double play. So, like I said, I think when guys get a little bit older, they get a little bit bigger and stronger. Third base is not it's not a difficult position for them going that way. You look at Justin Turner and some other guys that started more in the middle of their career and end up going to a corner because you get older, you get bigger, you get stronger, and baseball's a profile game. They want their corner guys to hit home runs, even though I don't think necessarily that's really Polanco's game. I think he'll be a solid defender. I wouldn't call him an above average defender there, but I think he'd be a solid player there.
What about Ryan Bliss at second base? They seem high on Ryan Bliss, and there's at times scout that he will show some flashes, but is he a long-term answer in your opinion at second base?
Like I said, that probably to be determined when it comes to Bliss. I fortunately got to see him quite a bit in minor league baseball, and he's a guy with some speed. I look at him more, Puck, as a utility guy that could play. He could kind of spell you at shortstop. He could be an everyday second baseman. I don't see him being a type of guy that could probably play every day at shortstop, but you could definitely see him playing second base. There's a little bit more thump in his bat than you would expect. He did hit 12 home runs at AAA last year in Tacoma before he got called up, and he's got speed. So, like I said, I think I look at him more as a utility player that can do lots of things for your club. But, if I wouldn't also be surprised if he ended up winning the second base job.
Dylan Moore, though, do you think someone like Dylan Moore, who, again, won a Gold Glove, is someone who was, a utility player, which is a great accomplishment for him. But you saw at times last year when he's given more playing time, he can be exposed. Is he a guy, if you give more playing time to, which and most likely will open up as the starting second baseman, is that going to be problematic for this team? Or is his best role just to go back to being that utility infielder, play everywhere?
That's kind of been his role. Like I said, and I think you use the word that a lot of people use in the game on the scouting side, Puck, is you get exposed. Guys can stand out there and guys can spell you, but all players have holes and they've got flaws, right? And they seem to get a little bit exposed more the more they play. Once again, I think he's a really great player for your organization. If Dylan Moore is, let's just say, on the Dodgers right now, where they're just absolutely loaded, he's not the guy that has to be the everyday guy. He doesn't have to be a guy that hits in the middle of the order. You can hit in the bottom of the order and have great success, kind of like Enrique Hernandez. A guy like that really brings great value to a really, really good team. I don't necessarily know if certain players like that bring huge value to a team that maybe is really, really looking for offense, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I want to jump. Yeah, absolutely does. I want to jump over the shortstop position. I mean, I think J.P. Crawford has been at times a real polarizing probably player on this team. I don't think there's a fan that does not like J.P. Crawford, but the production just hasn't been there. There's really only just been 1 year. Where have the struggles been for him when you view him?
Well, he's always been known as a really good defender, right? That's how you make your way up to the big leagues, playing shortstop. It's the most difficult position to play on the field, in my opinion, is shortstop. So you got to be able to catch the baseball. And once again, we've talked a little bit about age. He got up in 2017, I believe, like when he was 22 years old, and now he's 30. So once again, you're losing some of that range and that quickness. And usually when guys, their defense kind of goes the other way. And by no means am I saying JP's defense just went the other way, but probably not as good a defender now as he maybe was 6 years ago. Now you're looking for a little bit more on the bat. In 2023, he hit 19 home runs and drove in almost 70 runs, or driving in 70 runs too as well. So they're just really hard to find. Like I said, when you get a shortstop, that's why he got signed early, right? They signed him to a long-term deal because there's just very few guys in any organization that you feel like can play defense there every day. And also, he's left-handed and he's a solid runner. And the older he's gotten, he's got a little bit more thump. He's not a home run guy, but like you said, he almost hit 20 home runs in 2023.
But do you think that's his game? I mean, he seemed like a couple of years ago, Scout, he went away maybe from the line drives, getting the bat on the ball, put it in play, to trying to lift it to hit it out. It doesn't feel like that's his game. Should he revert back to what he once was?
Yeah, you want to be a guy that makes a lot of contact, but unfortunately, the game, that's what's going on right now. Players get paid by hitting the seats, right? And you can't blame players for thinking that way, right? Because the more home runs they hit, the more RBIs that they have, the bigger that contract is going to be. Do I think that's his game? Absolutely not. I don't think that's his game at all. But I think most people, I think probably, I would say 90% of players in Major League Baseball right now are trying to go that way other than the other way, of staying behind the ball and driving the ball the other way, hitting the ball on the ground. That's just not what's being taught. He's doing what's being taught. But there's obviously some changes in that organization. And I got to believe, I'm assuming, that's going to be an emphasis for a guy like JP of not hitting the ball in the air as much.
Donovan Solano, what can Mariner fans expect? What can this team expect from Donovan Solano? I mean, it was a signing, and it certainly for many people, scouted, did not move the needle.
Yeah, well, I don't think, in this market, if it wasn't a big proven name, I don't think anybody was going to be really super, super happy, So I think he's probably another one of those utility type players, but more of a fourth, type of infielder outfielder type guy. But if he gets hot, who knows what might be able to happen if he gets a chance to play every single day. That's always a tough spot when you're looking at, players, is that, hey, is he a utility guy? Is he a role guy? Or when he gets that opportunity, what does he do with it? So I think it really, like I said, it really kind of determines how well he does when he starts, especially at the beginning of the season. If he gets off to a hot start, my guess is he'll be that guy that they try to run with, for the first 80 games of the season.
Julio Rodriguez, it's always been the slow starts, Scout, to the season. Once they made the coaching move last year, Edgar Martinez takes over. He once again had a great finish to the season, gave a lot of credit to Edgar and his approach. It seemed like, from my eyes, and I think a lot of people's eyes, and I'm just curious if you see the same thing, is a simplistic approach, I think, for him to get back to. What did you see maybe in that last month or two with Julio in regards to working with Edgar, and how does he carry that over now to the start of this season?
Yeah, it looked like early in the season when the games I was at, he just swung a lot, and he swung early. He looked like there's a little bit more patience, and obviously if you grew up in the Northwest, watching Edgar Martinez hit, he was as patient as anybody. So I got to believe that though they're not all going to hit like Edgar, some of the things that made Edgar great, I got to believe as a coach, he's going to probably try to relay that information and hopefully, for Julio's sake, he learns some of that. But he's so super talented. From a fan, because even though I'm a scout, I'm a fan of the game, and I'm such a fan of Julio because you can tell how important the game is. He wants to win. I'm not in his head. I've never talked to Julio, but I will tell you a couple games it felt like he was trying to hit the 8-run home run because he wanted to win games. You get that big contract, and you want to win games. You want to do it a lot. But like I said, he's one of my favorite players in baseball ever to watch. About 5 years ago, when he was in Everett 4 years ago, it was the first time I seen him, and he's turned in. I knew he was going to be a great player. I didn't know he was going to be the player that he is. I didn't realize he was going to be a plus runner and a center fielder, as special as he is. But I'm expecting a humongous year for a guy like Julio. He
should be a guy that should be leading the league in doubles and be right up there in stolen bases.
Yeah, he's a guy that all day long can be a 30-30 type guy. Yeah. But when your offense is a little bit struggling, looks like they've had some struggles, you can pitch around special players. But when you have length in your lineup and you have more guys on your roster that are actually putting numbers up, they can't pitch around you, right? So like I said, he's been pitched around a little bit, right? And to his, not to his defense, but to call a spade, like he's had some struggles too, but it's baseball. It's really hard. Like it is really, really hard game. And people just think like, because a guy has success, he's always going to have success. The guy can have the same swing, but mentally, if you're questioning yourself or you look down in the dumps, man, the game gets really, really hard on you.
Victor Robles, no way that he's going to put up the numbers at that pace that he was doing last year, Scout. But did he find something, and maybe it was just a change of scenery where it relaxed him, And what does he bring? What does he bring to a team, especially hitting at the top of the order? What kind of energy and resume does a guy like Victor Robles bring us to a squad?
Well, the thing about Victor Robles too, he can do a lot of things. Like he's not just he's a little stronger than you think, even though he's 6 feet, 190 pounds. He's got a little soft, but he's a guy that, if you put him in the lineup and he plays every day, he's going to play a solid defense. But he's going to hit 10 plus home runs and probably steal close to 30 bases. That's the type of guy that he has. So if you can play, really good defense and like I said, as a career, like I said, batting average wise, that guy, he's a career 250 hitter nowadays. 250 in the big leagues is pretty good, right? It's not it's not horrible nowadays, but a 250 guy. But I think this is the guy that can hit 280 to 300 and like I said, steal close to 30 bases and have a little bit of stock. He's not going to hit a bunch of home runs, but I think he's a double-digit home run type of guy. And once again, I think with the Mariners, they might have quite a few guys that can do that. I don't see, besides Julio and obviously Cal's got power, they're not a team up and down the lineup that's going to hit 35 to 40 home runs apiece, right? They're going to have some guys that can steal 20 bases and hit 10 home runs. And I think he'll fit right in there, especially if they can pitch the way they want to pitch.
You brought up the name Cal Raleigh. What's the word around baseball, Scout, on him in terms of, do you think, or do people around the sport think he wants to be in Seattle long-term, or is he looking elsewhere eventually?
Well, he obviously sounds like he vented his frustrations a little bit, but he wants to win, right? And I think, losing mounts on it gets tough on everybody, right? And he's especially as a catcher, he knows that pitching staff that they have. And I got to believe, and once again, I'm not in his head, but I know the type of competitor he is. Actually, I know his dad really well. When I was a college coach, I had sent some players to his dad. So I know, the family just a little bit. And winning is super, super important to him, right? Super important to him. Even though, like I said, he's put up the good offense numbers. He's a great defender. I wouldn't say that he doesn't want to be there. Once again, I don't want to speak for him. I just think he really wants to win. And I think it's frustrating. And some people don't handle it as well when they're not winning. I'd much rather have a guy frustrated when he's winning than a guy frustrating when he's not playing well. Because, at times when he didn't play well, you didn't hear him complain about that. It was more, hey, we want to win. So, I've got a lot of respect for a guy that's kind of willing to kind of put his neck out there a little bit.
We got a lot to choose from, but I want to hear it from a scout. Best pitcher on the Mariners staff is who?
Wow. Oh gosh. We could talk all day long. I'll look at that entire starting rotation, whether it's Castillo or whether it's Gilbert, Kirby. Gosh, you look at on the scouting perspective, you always you want the younger type guys, but I don't know. Some days you watch Gilbert throw and you think Gilbert's the guy. Some guy you think Kirby's the guy. Sometimes you think Castillo's the guy. When Matt Brash is healthy, it's hard to, because he's kind of been the eighth inning guy. He hasn't really been the closer. It's really hard to say the best guy on the staff is not in the rotation, right? Or the closer, but he's so important. He could be in somebody's rotation. And then talk about Woo. Holy smokes. It's just it's embarrassment of riches when it comes to that pitching staff, Buck. It's a really impressive staff. So I honestly couldn't tell you one. But like I said, I'm a fan of watching all those guys pitch.
You think it was a mistake not to trade one of them?
Well, once again, I don't know what was offered. I know that starting pitching is really hard to find, right? And getting rid of any of those guys, if you're a general manager, you expect a lot in return. So I have no idea who was maybe offered out there, but you can't give up a guy that's any of those four guys, whether it was Gilbert, whether it was Kirby, whether it was Castillo, whether it was Woo, and you can go to the bullpen with the other guys, Munoz and Brash, all those guys. You want a lot in return. You want a lot in return for those types of guys. So obviously you want offense because that's what they've been lacking a little bit. But I wouldn't give up a frontline starter because literally all four of those guys at times act like they're a number one. Right? There's teams in the major leagues right now that don't have a number one, and the Mariners at times might have four. So the typical fan's going to say, yeah, trade one of those guys. Well, you don't want to just give those guys away. You want something meaty in return.
You brought up Matt Brash's name, and I want to end there. Are we expecting too much from him this year coming off the Tommy John surgery?
All depends what are you expecting. I think I think that especially if he stays in the bullpen, because like I said, he missed last year. He's not going to be. There's two sides of it. Some people say start a guy so he stays consistent on a routine. You're not using him as much, or put him in short spurts. Like he's dominant. Like when he's at his best, he's as good as any eighth inning guy in Major League Baseball, and sometimes it may be a closer. So no, I don't think so. And if you're going to have an injury, the Tommy John is not. You'd rather have an elbow than a shoulder. Guys come back more from their elbows than they do the shoulder. So no, I think the expectations should be high, and I expect him to have a great year.
There he is, the scout. We get to anonymous take on all things Mariners and baseball. From the scout who has been covering the sport for 30-plus years and has been involved in the sport his entire life. All right, The Scout, a new podcast here on Puck Sports, pucksports.com. Check it out on YouTube when you're there. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Also, check it out on your favorite podcast platforms. Please rate and review there, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And, of course, always up at pucksports.com. We'll talk down the road, Scout. Thank you.
Thanks, Puck.